The arrival of the Honorable Senate President and the Senators of the Republic of the Philippines.
The 24th session of the Senate, the first regular session of the 19th Congress is hereby called to order. May we ask, instead of a silent prayer, may we ask our Majority Leader, Senator Joel Villanueva, to lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Dakilang Diyos, Ama naming sumasalangit, kami po'y naninikluhod at muling lumalapit sa iyo. Tulungan niyo po kami at basbasan ang araw na ito ng iyong pagpapala at pagkalinga. Sa araw pong ito, inahain namin ang aming mga sarili upang paglingkuran ka at ang sambayan ng Pilipino. Sa iyong mga kamay, muli naming ibinabalik ang lahat ng papuri, pasasalamat sa pangalan ng aming Panginoong Yesus. Ang lahat po'y makiisa at magsabing Amen.
Amen. Secretary, please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Angara. Senator Binay. Senator Cayetano Alan. Senator Cayetano Pia. Senator De La Rosa. Senator Ejercito. Senator Escudero. Senator Estrada. Senator Gatchalian. Senator Go. Senator Ontiveros. Senator Lapid. Senator Legarda. Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mart, the Senate President.
With 18 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President,
I
at
would
this
just like to put on record that I just saw Senator De La Rosa as well.
Yes, Mr. President.
He just stepped in, so he's not late.
And some of our colleagues are actually at the lounge, Mr. President. Just to put that on record. Mr. President, at this juncture, may I be allowed to acknowledge and welcome some guests from the gallery who are with us today. Guests of Senator Alan Cayetano, Board Member Ray Noel Amante of Masbate, guests of Senator Bato de la Rosa, LGU of Lumban, Laguna, headed by Councilor Rose Ann Año Nuevo, guests of Senator J.V. Ejercito, Congressman Siriaco Jun Gato of Batanes, Mayor Edralyn Joy Salvame of Ibaan, Batangas. The guest of this representation, Secretary Mabel Sunga Acosta of Mindanao Development Authority, Board Member Tony Roman is also a friend of mine, Mr. President, is with us. And the guest of this representation, Mr. President, our good friend, the Department of Finance Undersecretary Shelo Magno.
Thank you very much. Welcome to your Senate, ladies and gentlemen. And all your requests just directed to the office of Senator Bato de la Rosa, who's right there, who sits in the back.
In charge
And
of
also
the committee on
he's in charge of the committee on
requests.
Mr.
President,
And
also
also, we'd like to just put on record that we declare the presence of quorum at 19 senators present. Just
thank
for
you,
the-
Mr. President.
Oh,
We have
20,
20.
together with
Yeah,
Senator
Senator Risa is also here,
Risa.
Mr. President, just to put that on record. Mr. President, we have also with us Christian Yap of Tarlac. He is also with us. And Congresswoman Geraldine Roman of Bataan. We also would like to welcome them, Mr. President.
Welcome to our distinguished colleagues from the House of Representatives to your Senate.
President, I move for a minute suspension.
Session suspended for 1 minute.
President.
Session resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary, if there's no objection, please proceed.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 1311, providing for the revised labor code of the Philippines by Senator Ontiveros.
Further to committees on constitutional amendments, labor and employment, human resource development.
1312, instituting the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, Senator De La Rosa.
Further to committees on migrant workers.
1313, declaring April 7 of every year as Barangay Health and Nutrition Workers Day, Senator Ontiveros.
Further to committees on local government and health and demography.
1314, strengthening the regulatory system in the country to combat counterfeit pharmaceutical products, declaring the manufacture, importation, distribution, sale, or offer for sale, or possession of counterfeit pharmaceutical products as an offense involving economic sabotage, providing for the prohibitions and penalties for violations, and revising for the purpose RA 8203 by Senator Ontiveros.
To the committees on health and finance.
1315, providing for the development of healthcare and manufacturing industries in the Philippines to strengthen the country's readiness and protection against pandemics and providing funds therefore. Senator Ontiveros.
To the committees on health, demography, trade and commerce, ways and means and finance.
1316, strengthening Philippine health security and emergency preparedness, readiness and response, appropriating funds and for other purposes. Senator Ontiveros.
Further to committees on health, demography, and finance.
1317, establishing the Philippine Geriatric Center under the Department of Health and appropriating funds therefore. Senator Ontiveros.
To the committees on health and finance.
1318, institutionalizing a national psoriasis care program and appropriating funds therefore. Senator Ontiveros.
To the committee on health and demography, ways and means and finance.
1319, instituting a Philippine National Autism Care Plan for the support of persons with autism and for other purposes. Senator Ontiveros.
To the committees on health and demography, women and children, and finance.
Resolutions. PS Resolution number 209, commending and congratulating Rubilen Amit, Carlo Biado, and Johan Chua for winning the Predator World Team's 10-ball championship in Klagenfurt, Austria. Senator Villanueva.
To the committee on rules.
211, directing the proper Senate committees to conduct an inquiry on the status of the country's salt supply and importation with the objective of introducing new policies and reviewing existing measures and programs to create salt self-sufficiency. Senator Binay.
To the committees on agriculture, trade and commerce.
213, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry into the alleged overpriced procurement of farm tractors amounting to 1.737 billion by the Department of Agriculture. Senator Marcos.
To the committee on accountability of public officers.
214, congratulating and commending the Gilas Pilipinas women for winning bronze at the 2022 FIBA Under-18 Women's Asian Championship. Senator Lapid.
To the committee on rules.
215, congratulating and commending Philippine Science High School student Gwen Liana Valimento for her win at the 2022 International Clean Tech Competition. Senator Lapid.
To the committee on rules.
216, congratulating and commending Team Philippines for their successful participation at the 2022 International Geography Olympiad organized by the International Geographical Union held in Paris, France. Senator Lapid.
To the committee on rules.
217, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry on the loan and sale of mobile wallet or e-wallet accounts with the end in view of protecting consumers in the country from cyber criminals. Senator Gatchalian.
To the committees on banks and financial institutions, trade and commerce.
218, urging the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program or 4Ps Oversight Committee to convene with the end in view of conducting a sunset review of RA 11310. Senator Ontiveros.
To the committees on social justice, economic affairs, and finance.
219, calling for the Senate to convene the Congressional Oversight Committee on the Comprehensive Tax Reform Program for the purpose of remedying the apparent inconsistency between the CREATE law and its implementing rules and regulations. Senator Ontiveros.
To the committee on ways and means. Additional reference of business.
Additional reference of business. Bills on first reading, Senate number 1320, strengthening the local taxation and the fiscal capacity of local government units by increasing their tax generation capacity, amending Section 150 of RA 7160 and for other purposes. Senator Gatchalian.
To the committee on local government.
1321, establishing specialty centers in the Department of Health hospitals and appropriating funds therefore. Senator Go.
To the committee on health, demography, and finance.
1322, establishing the Philippine Virology Science and Technology Institute, appropriating funds and for other purposes. Senator Villanueva.
To the committees on science and technology and finance.
1323, exempting qualified indigents from the payment of professional examination fees and for other purposes. Senator Villanueva.
To the committees on civil service, social justice, and finance.
1324, requiring the placement of automated external defibrillators in public spaces and increasing public awareness on its role in saving lives. Senator Lapid.
To the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance.
1325, institutionalizing a rapid rehousing program to end homelessness and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Lapid.
Committees on Urban Planning and Finance.
1326, implementing a lifeline rate for internet services, amending for the purpose Section 17 of RA 7925 by Senator Marcos.
Committees on Public Services.
1327, mandating the proper installation and maintenance of overhead electric distribution, communication lines, and related structures, Senator Marcos.
Committees on Public Service, Urban Planning, and Housing Resettlement.
1328, recognizing motorcycles as public utility vehicles, amending for the purpose RA 4136, as amended and for other purposes, Senator Marcos.
Committee on Public Services and Local Government.
1329, imposing a total ban on the importation of waste and its byproducts or residues and providing penalties therefore, Senator Marcos.
Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Finance.
1330, creating the Philippine Rice Development Authority, defining its powers and functions, providing funds and for other purposes, Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Economic Affairs and Finance.
1331, granting Philippine citizenship to Brian To, Senator Marcos.
Committee on Rules.
1332, granting civil service eligibility to government employees whose status of appointment is either casual or contractual and who have continuously rendered at least 7 years of efficient service, Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Civil Service and Government Reorg.
Resolutions, PS Res number 221, congratulating and commending the Filipino student delegates that competed in the 2022 Newtonian International Physics Olympiad Challenge, Senator Lapid.
Committee on Rules.
224, commending and congratulating the Philippine National Netball Team, si Club Pilipinas, for winning the plate title in the 12th Asian Netball Championships in Singapore, Senator Go.
Committee on Rules.
225, directing the Committee on Ways and Means and other appropriate committees of the Senate to conduct an inquiry on the revenues generated by the government from Philippine offshore gaming operators vis-a-vis the social costs attendant to the operation of POGOs in the country, Senator Villanueva.
Committees on Ways and Means and Games and Amusements.
226, directing the Senate Committee on Youth to conduct an inquiry on the reported decline in the physical and mental well-being of our youth with the end view of crafting a whole-of-government strategy to address these issues and promote quality of life for our young people, Senator Angara.
To the Committee on Youth.
227, directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry on the government's revenue collection from the implementation of RA 11590 and the economic and social costs incurred by the government in addressing crimes related to the Philippine offshore gaming operations industry, Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Ways and Means, Games and Amusements. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture and with the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1306 as reported out under Committee Report number 4. This is the postponement of the barangay and SK elections of December 22. I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1306. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Mr. President, the status of the measure is that we are in the period of interpellations. I move that we open the period of interpellations.
There being no objection, the period of interpellations,
Yes,
is
Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. At this juncture, may we recognize the sponsor of the measure, the chairperson of the Committee on Electoral Reforms, Senator Amy Marcos, and to interpellate our distinguished Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Our distinguished Deputy Minority Floor Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros, is recognized.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. Madam Chair, if I may proceed. Mr. President, Madam Chair, this is just a short manifestation and a question on the proposed postponement of the barangay SK elections. To date, Congress has already enacted several laws postponing the barangay and SK elections and in effect, overextended the terms of the barangay officials. My office has received the position paper from our barangay youth leaders, signed by more than 100 members of the Model SK network. And I would just like to put their position on record because our young people need to be heard. According to these SK leaders, ang muling pagpapaliban ng halalan ay may implikasyon sa makabuluhang demokrasya. This postponement, which is not the first, is a setback to democracy and a disincentive to participation. Mr. President and Madam Chair, I echo our young leaders in the barangays that elections are essential in strengthening our democracy, especially at the grassroots. By holding elections, our young leaders asserted, which I also agreed with in principle, we guarantee the right to vote, create opportunities to hold barangay leaders accountable, and incentivize leaders' performance for good barangay governance. That's for the record, good Chair and Mr. President.
Thank you very,
Pangalawa po. Yes, Madam
thank you
Chair.
very much to Senator Ontiveros. We shall consider that position even up to the BICAM level.
Maraming salamat, Madam Chair. I will certainly transmit the response of the good chair to the Model SK Network leaders. At pangalawa po, Mr. President, here is where I would like to ask if the Madam Chair is amenable to reconsidering the proposal to hold the election in May 2023 instead of December 2023. And I'm asking this as many of the barangay leaders, people's organizations, and other stakeholders I've talked to are inclined to support the more reasonable holding of elections in May 2023 for several reasons. It is within the 7 months needed preparatory time by the COMELEC, less required additional funding to support the elections, enable our barangay and SK leaders to serve office for 5 years. Although not as much as almost double their original 3-year terms if we postpone till December 2023. And lastly, so we can align the next dates of the elections with that of the period of 3 years, as anyway also proposed in the committee report. So at the proper time, I will propose this amendment and hope for the consideration of the good chair.
Yes, thank you very much. And that has been much discussed, that May 2023 was more attuned to the purpose of this postponement. However, given that the principal reason for the postponement to December 2023 is to allow the reforms to be debated, to be properly formulated, and finally enacted, there does not seem to be adequate time given that we are confronted with the passage of the budget for the next couple of months. There is a great deal of unfinished business. Hence, the 7 months tolling will not really begin immediately, but will actually have to start by next year, during which the complete release of funding may be delayed as well. So these are the concerns, but we will certainly listen to our minority senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will, however, based on that, need to reiterate my concurrence with one of the opinions proffered yesterday by the minority leader in his interpellation of the good chair, that if the reforms we want to implement in our electoral system are the main reason to decide one way or the other on this bill, edi pwedeng gawing bahagi na lamang yung pagtatrabaho sa mga reformang iyon right after either as scheduled or earlier scheduled elections for the barangay and SK. And perhaps consistent also with the preference of our young leaders in the Model SK network, this matter of the one proposed amendment on the date will necessarily become a prejudicial question for this representation. But thank you very much. Agyamanak, good Madam Chairperson. Salamat kaayo, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And we will consider all the suggestions of our minority leadership.
Majority Leader.
Okay, yeah. Nag-amend ako.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President,
Are there other
Is it the
interpellators?
Period now of
No more?
amendments.
May we close?
Close the period of interpellation.
Mr. President, with the consent of the chamber, no member wishes to interpellate, Mr. President. I move that we close the period of interpellations and debate.
There be no objection to the motion of the Majority Leader. The period of interpellation is closed.
Mr. President, I now move to open the period of amendments.
The period of, there being an objection, the period of amendments are open.
Thank you.
With no committee amendments, Mr. President, considering that this is a substitute bill, I now move that we open the period of individual amendments.
There's no objection to the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Amy Marcos, for her individual amendments.
Our distinguished colleague is recognized.
Yes, the committee has accepted the amendment from Senator Alan Peter Cayetano. In page 2, line 20, after the period, delete the quotation mark and add the phrase as follows. Provided further, comma, that individuals otherwise eligible as candidates in the December 2022 Sangguniang Kabataan elections shall still be qualified to run for the December 2023 Sangguniang Kabataan elections, subject to style, Mr. President.
Is there any objection to the amendment? There being none, amendment's accepted.
Yes, Mr. President, just to put on record that Senator Alan Cayetano would like to express his sincerest thanks, Mr. President, for accepting this particular amendment, and we share his sentiment. Mr. President, that is the extent of the individual amendments, and so with the consent of the body, I move that we close the period of individual amendments.
There being no objection of the motion, the period of individual amendments are hereby closed.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President.
Now, Mr. President, at this juncture, I move to adopt Senate Bill number 1306 as reported out under Committee Report number 4, subject to style. I so move, Mr. President.
Senate Bill there being no objection, Senate Bill number 1306 is hereby approved on second reading. Before we
Yes,
Manigam.
you can.
Yes.
You can, I just want to make my no vote of record, Mr. President.
Okay, there's an objection from our distinguished colleague.
No, not objection, Mr. President. It's not an objection, it's a no vote,
Sorry,
Mr.
it's a
President.
no vote, yes. My apologies.
So it's now approved on second reading. We congratulate our dear colleague, Senator Amy Marcos. You want to speak? You want to speak?
Suspend.
President, I
consideration.
move that we suspend consideration of this Senate Bill number 1306 under Committee Report number 4.
There being no objection to the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move for 1 minute suspension. Mr. President.
Session suspended for 1 minute.
Mr. President, I move that we reconsider reconsider the second reading approval of Senate Bill number
1306.
1306. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection of the motion of the Majority Leader, motion is approved.
Yes, Mr. President, I move to open the period of individual amendments. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros.
The distinguished
introduce
colleague,
individual
Minority
amendments.
Senator Risa Ontiveros, recognized.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President, and with many thanks to the good sponsor for giving way that I may still make of record my proposed amendment and the decision of the Madam Chair about this. I move that by way of amendment that the date of the election be fixed instead of in December 2023 in, yes, referring specifically to page 3, line 5, instead of December 2023 to hold the election in May 2023. I so move, Mr. President.
Thank
We
you
ask the
very much, Senator Ontiveros, for putting that option on record. It will certainly be brought up at the BICAM and discussed adequately. But at this juncture, the committee is unable to accept your amendment, and we stay with the date of December 2023. Thank you very much, though.
Yamanak, Madam Chair, at this point, with the assurance of the good chair that this will be reconsidered at least one last time in BICAM, I submit and will no longer appeal it to the plenary at this point in time. Thank you, Madam Chair. Salamat kaayo, Mr. President.
Thank you very much to distinguished colleagues. Therefore, the amendment was not accepted. What's the next?
Then, Mr.
Motion,
President,
Your
I move that we close the period of
Individual amendment.
individual amendments,
Being
Mr.
no
President.
more further amendments, the period of no objections as well, period of amendment is closed.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1306 under Committee Report number 4. I so move, Mr. President.
There's a motion to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1306. There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved. And I believe we have our colleagues
Yes,
who
please register my
register
no
your
vote.
no vote. Yeah. How about the Senator Risa also?
Senator Risa.
Senator Risa is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this point, I will request that together with my minority leader, that my no vote also
Be
be made of
registered.
record. Yes, salamat kaayo, Mr.
We shall,
President.
ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. President, I move for a minute suspension.
Session suspended for 1 minute.
Session resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1306. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, the suspension is suspended. The consideration
Thank you.
of committee report is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this juncture, Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration on committee report number 3. This is the fiasco behind sugar order number 4. I move that we resume consideration. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, consideration of committee report number 3 is now in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of this measure is that we are in the period of interpellation. I ask that we recognize the sponsor of the measure, the chairperson of the committee, the Blue Ribbon Committee, Senator Francis Tolentino, and to continue with her interpellation, our Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Senators Tolentino and Senator Tiberos are hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good sponsor, if I may continue. Mr. President, during the last hearing, there was some dispute as to whether or not the August 4th meeting took place. So I would like to quote from page 164 of the transcript dated September 6, 2022. According to E.S. Victor Rodriguez, Your Honor, quote, Your Honor, makakaasa po kayo. I will determine whether there was a hybrid or there were participants in this Zoom meeting. At kagaya po ninyo, wala rin ho kaming layunin o pakay na paratangan ang kung sino man at ng kung ano man ang mga pinatawag po ng committee. Aalamin ko po iyon, Your Honor. And what I can assure you, at kung may naganap man hong hybrid doon sa via Zoom, malalaman po ninyo. Close quote. So, good chair, has the former executive secretary gotten back to us with this information?
As far as I can recall, Mr. President, as far as I can recall, I was not, I'm not aware of any information coming from the good former ES as to what was his definitive reply. But, Mr. President, if my memory serves me right, I think during the latter part of that conversation, if the TSN can be handled to me, the executive secretary, the former executive secretary, was definitive that there was no Zoom meeting. If I just don't have the TSN, the transcripts here before me, Mr. President. So if in reply to the question, wala pong sagot sa akin, Mr. President, si former ES Victor Rodriguez.
Salamat po, Mr. Chair. Good chair, Mr. President. Just to reiterate na sinabi ni ES, walang sinabi pa si ES Rodriguez dito sa page 164 ng transcript dated September 6 na walang naganap na Zoom meeting. In fact, he ended in this paragraph at least na malalaman po ninyo kung sakali. Which is also why, Mr. President, in that meeting, and also, Mr. President, good chair, the committee report itself already admitted that meeting, mentioned that meeting. So, Mr. President, good chair, in that meeting or in that hearing, I propose that the committee request for a copy of the Zoom recording of the meeting. Was that request ever made? And I still insist that that request is valid and reasonable because, sabi ko nga po, dito sa page 20 ng committee report, nakasulat nga dito, lines 9 to 11, it appears that the said meeting was conducted via a hybrid arrangement, a mix of physical and virtual online attendance. So the committee report itself mentions the meeting. So, good chair, was the request made for a copy of the Zoom recording of that meeting?
I think, Mr. President, the request was then noted by the presence, because of the presence of the good executive secretary. So we took it upon the good executive secretary to honor his commitment if there was indeed a Zoom meeting that took place. It gagaya po nung binasa nyo kanina, but in terms of a formal letter from the committee, I must have directed the secretary, the COMSEC, or probably the COMSEC took the reply of the executive secretary as an affirmative response to the request.
So, but is the chair telling the plenary that he must have directed, or he did
The records,
direct?
the records will show that,
Yes.
Mr. President.
And if by records, of course, at this point in time, the record of all records is the committee report. On
No,
that,
the TSN would
Ah, the
probably be
TSN.
the more accurate
Mr. Chair.
record.
Although, Mr. President, good chair, a TSN would be a basis for the committee report, and the committee report on page 20
Yes.
mentions.
Yes, that's
a
why
set
we
meeting.
noted that. We noted
Yes.
that. We never deviated from what really transpired during the presence of the executive secretary when he was subpoenaed.
Yes. And if the chair confirms that the meeting is mentioned in the committee report, the chair said that he must have directed the COMSEC to request a copy, but and that the chair, all of us, expect the former ES to honor his commitment. But as of this point in time, it seems the former ES did not heed the blue ribbon. Is that accurate, Mr. Chair?
So that's why page line 9 of page 20 mentioned the word it appears. So there was no reply, but the confluence of events must have overtaken the ability of the executive secretary to confront the events, the daily events, and we all know in hindsight that he resigned after a few days. So this must have, I'm not speaking on his behalf, this must have likewise taken a toll on his daily activities, including his official and family activities, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, good sponsor, confluence of events or not, yung binitawang mga salitang iyon ni ES na aalamin pa niya, at pag nalaman nila ay malalaman po natin, I would expect na lalo na po kung magdidesisyon na magbibitiw, ay talagang tutuparin yung mga commitments, especially until the last day in office. So, an important point that needs to be made here is that despite the request of the Blue Ribbon, ay hindi tumugon, hindi tumupad si ES. And in that instance, nagpakita na walang paggalang sa Senado. Even in the absence of that copy of the Zoom recording of the meeting, Mr. President, at least in the chair's opinion, was there an August 4 meeting?
I am not privy to any meetings that took place. I am not part of the executive branch. I was there to sift the documents and evidences objectively, so I cannot answer as a resource person or as a witness, Mr. President.
Fair enough. Good sponsor, Mr. President. Baka mabalikan natin more definitively yung tanong na yon kung meron nga bang naganap na August 4 meeting towards the end of my interpellation. So just moving forward one more step, in relation po to the previous question, a question that surfaced was whether or not former Administrator Serafica was lying when he disclosed that the President mentioned po not ordered, wala pong nagsasabi na inutos ni Presidente ang 600,000. When former Administrator Serafica disclosed that the President mentioned the importation or an amount, the President mentioned an amount of 600,000 metric tons for which Admin Serafica was branded a liar. Sabi naman po ng good chair during the hearing, there is no corroboration to that part of the testimony of former Admin Serafica. Pero hindi ba, Mr. President, good chair, is it not true that former board member Valderrama corroborated the testimony of former Administrator Serafica?
Yes, if the records will show that, I think the testimony of Mr. Valderrama would show that. The initial reaction then of this representation as the chair was that this was just raised for the first time during that hearing. When there have been previous hearings, previous sworn statements submitted, so this was, I think, I have no notes in front of me, Mr. President, not a single paper, just on my recollection. I think it was August 2, if I'm not mistaken, that sworn statement, which I asked to be clarified. Sabi ko, bakit ngayon lang? Bakit ngayon lang lumalabas ito kung I think it was in the form of a supplemental affidavit, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Chair, indeed. And salamat po sa Chair sa pag-confirm na yung testimony ni dating Administrator Serafica ay nagko-corroborate sa testimony ni dating board member Valderrama. And as to the matter of yung mga bagay na huli or pahuli ng sinabi or mga bagay na hindi kaagad sinabi or hanggang ngayon ay hindi sinasabi. In fact, mababalikan din natin sa pagtapos ng interpellation ko. Dahil baka hindi lang si dating Administrator Serafica ang guilty doon or gumawa nun. So, if the testimony of former Administrator Serafica was corroborated by that of former board member Valderrama, ang totoo ay yung uncorroborated testimony ay yung kay dating E.S. Rodriguez na walang 600,000 metric ton amount na nabanggit during that meeting.
Mr. President, I was, if the question is there was no corroboration in terms of the 300,000, I think it's not just the corroboration of the witnesses present during the investigations, but even contemporaneous media reports, reports coming from the SRA, reports coming from the executive branch, and even the President himself, and even the stakeholders when it was agreed upon that the initial importation subsequent to this fiasco would be reduced to 150,000, the base figure then was 300,000, so that the 600,000, if I can recollect again, as my notes are not here in front of me, the threshold figure would be 300, which was half into two figures, 150. So that's the only recollection I can have right now.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Good Chair, Mr. President. Mas ang tinatanong ko po ay hindi ba't sinabi po ni dating E.S. Rodriguez na walang binanggit na halagang 600,000 metric tons, pero walang nagko-corroborate doon. Walang nagko-corroborate na walang binanggit na 600. Opo.
Because the prevailing figure being discussed was just 300,000 metric tons. Nagulat nga po ako noon, but bigla lumabas yung 600. Kaya that was my, if I can recall my not so good term, deaf, was used. Kasi naririnig ko naman eh. So I think that was the first time I heard. If I'm being asked by the goods, the lady from Panay, if I heard it right, I heard it for the first time, and the manner of corroboration as to the executive secretary's figure of 300,000 was contemporaneous in character. Even others, or even the House, which we can take legislative notice of, ang pinag-uusapan din is 300,000, the House investigation.
Yes, good sponsor, Mr. President. Wala naman po akong argumento tungkol dun sa karamihan ng pinag-uusapang amounts ay bandang 300,000 metric tons. At least na on the record ko na lang po na sinabi ni dating E.S. Rodriguez na walang 600,000 na nabanggit, pero walang nag-corroborate dyan na walang 600,000 na nabanggit. Moving forward po dun sa isang point din na pinag-uusapan na namin ng good sponsor. And Mr. Chair, this is not to kick a man down when he is already out, but it is material because former Administrator Serafica and former board member Valderrama are being accused of not disclosing right away the matter of the mention of 600,000 metric tons. At just based on fairness, Mr. President, good sponsor, kung kakastiguhin po natin sina Ginoong Serafica at Valderrama dahil meron silang hindi sinabi agad sa ating komite sa simula ng investigasyon, tingin ko lamang po ay kailangan ding kastiguhin or dapat ding kastiguhin si Mr. Rodriguez. So lastly, Mr. President, good sponsor, kung alam po natin, with all the raids that have been conducted so far, kasabay nitong sugar fiasco, how much imported sugar has been confiscated? Confiscated po hindi po raided at padlocked lang. Dahil raid po ng raid, padlock ng padlock, pero kalaunan ay pinubuksan din pala dahil legal naman pala ang import permit. So, how much imported sugar has been actually confiscated as a result of the raids conducted?
Mr. President, I am not aware of the exact number, the volume, the metric tons, but I am quite sure that even while we were conducting that last investigation, a raid or visitorial power was exercised by the Bureau of Customs in Nasugbu, Batangas, wherein 400,000 sacks of sugar were seen in a warehouse near near an azucarera. And eventually there were others, and this can be gleaned from news reports. But I don't have the figures because during that last meeting, that last investigation, hearing I'm just trying to use my memory because I happen to have a visitor in the person of JPE, was a good memory during lunchtime. Trying to use my memory now. I think the Bureau of Customs chief was not around during our last investigative hearing. I can be corrected by the TSN, but I don't have the figures if that was the question.
Yes, Mr. Good Sponsor, Mr. President, yun nga po yung tanong kung ilan na ba talagang dami ng imported sugar ang na-confiscate. At kung lamang alam din po ng Good Share, ganong karaming imported sugar ang na-auction off? Kung na-confisca po siya, kaya i-auction off. Meron po ba tayong impormasyon dyan?
Mr. President, as I can recall during the first hearing, the jurisdiction of the committee's investigation was just confined to SO number 4, although this would be collateral matters. We never focused on the smuggling side to such a point that we never attempted to go after the smugglers, the hoarders, and the records of the Bureau of Customs. So we just confine again ourselves with the preliminaries concerning the crafting of SO number 4, who were the personalities involved, what was the legal basis, etc. So hindi po tayo nakarating doon, Mr. President. Otherwise, nag-iimbestiga pa ho tayo hanggang ngayon.
Yes, good chair, Mr. President. Indeed, we never gaya ng sinabi ng good chair, we never focused on the smuggling side. Kaya rin nga po, hirap po kaming makaunawa at express po ito sa aming minority report kung bakit isa sa mga krimen na iaakusa dun sa apat ay yung anti-agricultural smuggling law. Kung indeed, hindi naman talaga tayo tumutok dun sa smuggling side nitong sugar fiasco. And siguro po, Mr. President, good sponsor, kung bakit mahirap po talaga nating sagutin kung gaano karami imported sugar na kumpiska, gaano karami imported sugar ang na-auction off pagkatapos kumpiskahin, ay dahil I would say, Mr. President, good sponsor, the answer is zero. At kanina nabanggit na rin po ng good chair yung House hearing. Ito pong halagang zero sa confiscated at auctioned off confiscated sugar, lumabas po sa House hearing din nung September 8. At napag-alaman ko na rin ito ay paksa ng isang internal briefing ng Bureau of Customs. So, malinaw po na yung ideya na may hoarding, at to such scale na itong hoarding ang dahilan ng high prices, ay pinasisinungalingan po ng mga ebidensyang nasa harap ng ating mga mata at lumabas din po, gaya ng nabanggit ng good chair na House hearing, lumabas din po sa hearing na iyon. The sugar shortage is real, Mr. President, good sponsor. And in our scramble to punish, to charge, even to issue immigration lookout orders, lugmok pa rin ang Pilipinas sa taas ng mga presyo. In closing my interpellation, Mr. President, good sponsor, what is glaring here is the lack of candor of the former executive secretary and his failure to comply with the request of the Blue Ribbon. We've seen that so many things were not stated. The truth about the August 4th meeting, the fact that there was a statement made, just a statement made on the 600,000 metric tons. And this points to, I just have to say it, a badge of bad faith. May history na lamang po. May history be the judge of these men in public service. And may our Filipino consumers, farmers, laborers be served and given highest priority. Marami pong salamat, Mr. President, at maraming salamat po, good sponsor.
Thank you, Senator Tiveros. I join the gentle interpellator from Panay Capiz in advocating for the consumer rights of our kababayans, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Risa, and thank you, Senator Tolentino. Session is suspended.
Majority leader.
Madam President, at this juncture, I move to suspend consideration of Committee Report Number 3. So move, Madam President.
No objections, hearing none, it is thereby suspended.
Thank you, Madam President. At this juncture, Madam President, and with the permission of the body, we take this privilege speech up, and I ask, Madam President, that we recognize the distinguished lady from Taguig and Pateros and the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Pia Cayetano, to deliver her speech. I so move, Madam President.
For the privilege hour, we recognize Senator Pia Cayetano.
Thank you, Madam President, dear colleagues. It's a very short speech. As they say, a picture says 1,000 words. So may I ask that the picture I would like to share is loaded right now. Do I need to suspend to get it ready? I'm told that they are setting up the photo. It's just 2 photos, Your Honors. I don't think I have to say much more after I'm able to load the photo. Madam President, let's suspend because I'm told they're still fixing it.
Session is suspended.
Madam President, I have 2 photos to show. One is grabbed from Instagram, the Instagram account of Sam YG. It's a better photo than mine, which is why I showed it first. And I'll also share my photo as well. That's mine. They were not, siguro mas maaga yung dating ko, or not the same day actually, because my photo was taken a few weeks ago. I was not able to deliver the speech on this as there were other matters on the floor at that time. But anyway, Your Honors, this is in our airport, and I was shocked to see groups of Filipinos in complete PPE. So I asked around, and I was also rushing to get to my to line up and get to my gate on time. So I wasn't able to converse with them. Sometimes we have time to take pictures, chat with them, but unfortunately that wasn't one of those days. So I just asked around and was told later on that they are OFWs. Your Honor, I'd like to point out they are in complete PPE, including the footsies that you only see in operating rooms. It's like the height of ridiculousness that they have to wear those footsies because they're walking around the whole airport where thousands of people enter, walk around every day. So there is nothing hygienic about being in footsies as opposed to being in their regular rubber shoes or walking shoes. So the first thing that came to my mind was to inform Secretary Toots Ople. She's a friend, and so I messaged her and I asked her if she's aware of any requirement for our departing OFWs to be in PPE. Sabi niya, parang wala naman, but she will check, and I sent her these photos. Tingnan nyo naman, Madam President,
Hanggang gloves.
may gloves pa. Nakakaiyak. Then may face shield pa. Your Honors, I'd like to put context here. I attended my very first conference since the pandemic started was when I represented the Senate in November in the IPU, the Interparliamentary Union that was held in Spain. And if I'm not mistaken, I hope I'm not confusing the dates, no? But on my way back, the airline was handing out face shields to me and all the other passengers. And I had to tell the airline attendant, this was November, Your Honor, so I hope my dates are right. I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong. That there is no longer any face shield requirement, no? If I'm not mistaken, and I'm asking my staff to check, that was November of last year. And they were not properly informed. Kaya they were handing the passengers, including me, anyone returning to the Philippines. So, hindi maganda ang communication sa kanila na wala ng face shield requirement. In fairness to the airline, they were, I guess, kind enough to provide us with face shields, thinking that it is requirement. Madam President, that was end of last year. Mag-iisang taon na, and here we have our OFWs naka-full PPE with face shield, footsies, and gloves. It's ridiculous, Your Honors. I feel so bad for them because it is not comfortable wearing this, and that's why tayo hangang-hanga tayo sa mga doktor, no, that they had to wear this, and I'm not sure what the protocols are now, but our OFWs are wearing it when they travel. Ang hirap kaya magbanyo na ganyan ang suot mo. Isipin lang natin yon, dun pa lang. And I wonder how much they were charged to comply with whoever's requirement this is. So, I move on to I'd like to put on record some information that I've gathered on the requirements in different countries. In the UAE, the requirement is as follows. Vaccination certificate containing a QR code. They are not required to present a negative result of RT-PCR test for COVID. Wala na ngang PCR test na result na papakita tapos may PPE papunta doon. To be clear, hindi ho ako 100% sure kung saan sila papunta, no? But most of our OFWs go to these areas. So, we can kind of assume that some of these pictures I have their destination is one of these areas. For Kuwait, travelers are no longer required to get tested for COVID-19 before traveling to Kuwait. The pre-departure testing requirement has been removed. And then, for Riyadh, all non-Saudis who have not been vaccinated against COVID must abide by the following institutional quarantine procedures for 7 days. So there's quarantine. All non-Saudis who are immunized are allowed to enter Saudi without the need for a quarantine period, provided that they present an official vaccination certificate and submit a negative PCR. Wala ako nakikitang nakalista dito na naka-full PPE sila, Your Honor. Qatar, have I read Qatar? I've read Qatar. I've read it, okay. Meron din akong Hong Kong. I'm just assuming that because this was my photos at least were, I believe, in the evening, so usually ang palabas nun are the countries I've mentioned. But in Hong Kong, there are quarantine measures, negative PCR, confirmation of a room reservation, kasi as you know, sa Hong Kong, merong quarantine requirement, although I just read in the papers that they're planning to make it home-based. Again, there's no PPE requirement, Your Honor. So, just to complete the information, not just information, but I'd like to spread into the record one more thing. Bear with me, Your Honors. I'm going through these lengthy notes that I have. Okay. It will be, the records will reflect, Your Honors, that I had the opportunity to interpolate when our colleague, Senator Tulfo, had a privileged speech on migrant workers. And at that point, I mentioned the United Nations Conventions on the Protection of the Rights of all migrant workers and members of their families. I'd like to include in this speech Article 7, and this Article 7 of the said convention states, state parties undertake in accordance with the international instruments concerning human rights to respect and to ensure to all migrant workers and members of their families within their territory or subject to their jurisdiction the rights provided for in the present convention without distinction of any kind, such as to sex, race, color, language, religion, or conviction, political or other opinion, national, ethnic, or social origin, nationality, age, economic position, property, marital status, birth, or other status. I believe, Your Honor, that this is discrimination if in fact there is such a requirement. I am not saying there is a requirement, but I am just putting on record that we are protected by this convention, that if based on the rules for entering the countries that I mentioned, as I gathered from the website, are correct, I didn't see anything about Filipino OFW, other OFWs, or any other nationality entering their countries to be in full PPE. So, either there is discrimination against our own nationals, or may rumaraket. Merong nakikinabang, may nagte-take advantage ng COVID situation na pinipilit ang ating mga OFWs na maghirap kasi hindi ho madali magsuot ng ganyan at malamang magbayad. Wala na yata akong idadagdag. Let me just check. Actually, let me put on record Article 16 of the International Labor Organization, Article 16 on Occupational Safety and Health Convention of the ILO states, employers have duties concerning the provision and use of PPE at work. PPE should only be used as a last resort. If PPE is still needed after implementing other controls, employers must provide this for their workers free of charge. So, I'm just putting all of this on record para kung may maririnig akong mga palusot at dahilan na requirement yan, requirement ng kahit anong bansa o requirement ng kahit anong kumpanya na nag-recruit ng ating mga OFWs, nilalagay ko na po yan sa record para klaro ang lahat. Finally, I think that is what I have for today, Your Honor. So I leave this to our better, more in-depth scrutiny. I hope we can help out our OFW so that they won't have to pay extra to travel for work, and they don't have to travel in this kind of discomfort, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cayetano. If I may make a manifestation, if indeed it was required by a government agency or an entity, I believe that we must find out, and perhaps during the hearings of the DOLE or other pertinent government agencies, we must find out, because definitely this would be an additional expense on the part of the overseas Filipinos. And secondly, I think it's clear discrimination. The OFW lane must be for expeditious processing for overseas Filipinos whom we call mga bayani. But to require them to look that way in that difficult situation, traveling such long hours, ano ba ho ang kaibahan ng OFW at ng nagabiyahing ibang Pilipino? Bakit sila ay ganyan ang suot kailangan kung minamandato ng anumang ahensya ng gobyerno. So these are basic questions I also want answered, and it is clear discriminatory at face value. Just looking at it. What is the difference? If you're OFW, you have to wear a PPN. If you're not, you don't need to wear. If there is such a memo, I cannot imagine. Someone must have told them. Our majority leader knows
Yes.
the PIDOS, right? All the departure orientation.
Yes.
I think we must find out soon, so that unnecessary expense must not be brought on our already beleaguered overseas Filipinos. So we thank the senator from Taguig and Pateros from bringing this to our attention. And with that, Majority Leader, would you
Yes,
like to
I,
refer it?
Madam President,
Thank you.
before we refer this very important privilege, please, may I be allowed, with the indulgence of my colleagues here, if I'd be given some time to just ask some clarificatory questions, if the distinguished lady from Taguig would yield to some questions from this
Please proceed.
representation.
Of course, I will not, I cannot assure the majority floor leader that I have the answers. Most of the speech I delivered is based on my observation and some of the basic knowledge I have on the rights of migrant workers. But I'm very happy to hear out his honor's questions, concerns, and comments.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam President, distinguished colleague, especially for rising today and raise this very alarming pictures, Madam President. Itong picture na ito, Madam President, parang nagpaalala sa atin doon sa privilege speech ni Senator Tulfo, doon sa mga videos na pinakita niya. Parang kumulo na naman yung dugo natin, Madam President, considering that we are considering our OFWs as our new heroes, Madam President. And on the onset, I'd like to congratulate our distinguished colleague, Senator Pia, for raising this issue. I have not heard of anything like this, Madam President, and I've been the chairperson of the Committee on Labor for about 6 years. And I share the sentiments of our Senate President Pro Tempore. Bakit kailangang pagsuotin sila ng ganito? And so, perhaps my first question, Madam President, distinguished colleague, is nung nakita niyo po ito at itong mga pictures na ipinakita po ninyo, nalaman po ba natin kung isang bansa o isang syudad sa mundo ang kanilang pupuntahan? Isa lang po ba? Or iba-iba rin po yung nabalitaan natin tungkol dito? If we have that information,
Yeah.
Madam President.
Mr. President, kasi nga nagmamadali na ako papunta din sa aking gate, no? So pinatanong ko na lang, and then as I recall, I was told na iba-iba ang destination nila. But they were all Middle East countries, yung naaalala ko. Yung ganun yung generalization. That's why I also don't want to take it, I don't want to mention a specific country kasi parang it wasn't that clear. But on that note, since one of the photos that I grabbed was from Sam YG, nag-abala naman si Sam YG in his caption to say that upon his own inquiry, they are seafarers. So, ito naman kasing kay Sam YG bago lang. Yung photos ko kasi was weeks ago pa. So, nagtanong din nung nakita ko yung kay Sam YG, sabi ko timing na rin na tagal na hong pending itong bala ko mag-privilege speech. So, nag-message na rin po ako sa kaibigan ko who works for the biggest seafarers union, AMUSOP, no? Unfortunately, as of this moment, hindi ko pa nakuha yung sagot niya. Kung meron siyang alam ng mga requirements na ganyan for seafarers.
Madam President, thank you. Isa sa mga grab ng aking atensyon, Madam President, kanina habang nagdi-deliver ng privilege speech ang ating kasamaan, Senator Pia, ay yung pong pagsusuot ng face shield. In fact, dito po kay Sam YG's Instagram account, at sabi nyo nga po, this is just recent, I suppose,
Yes.
nakasuot pa rin po ng face shield yung ating mga bagong bayani. Bakit ho kaya? May nabanggit po kaya? Or the distinguished lady made mention a while ago that she was able to talk to Secretary Toots Ople about this? Was there any talks about this particular incident, that they would have to wear PPEs, including gloves? Kanina may nakita ho
Yes.
tayo naka-gloves, and then ito nga ho, pati
Oo.
face shields.
And just to show you na hindi nga ito recent, dala din ng ibang trabaho natin, August 23 pa ho itong text exchange namin ni Secretary Ople. Sagot naman siya kaagad, in fairness to the Secretary. Sabi niya, kung alam ko ba daw kung anong agency ito, and this is, I quote, definitely not a DMW and or a POEA policy. Yun ang sabi niya. Tapos sabi niya, baka ways ito to extract na naman money from our workers. So concerned na concerned din siya.
Yeah. With that, Madam President, and our Senate President Pro Tempore made mention about PIDOS kanina, yung pre-departure, and when we passed the Department of Migrant Workers Act, mas naging extensive ang ating orientation. In fact, full cycle yung reintegration natin, not just before they leave the country, even while they are there. Nagpasa din tayo ng OFW handbook, pati yung integration when they come back, what would happen if they needed to be repatriated by the government. So lahat po nandun, no? And I just would like to raise also early this year po yung sa Hong Kong experience, if I recall. Yung sa Hong Kong experience, there's a fifth wave COVID-19 na cases brought about by Omicron variant. Meron pong mga reports doon na nabanggit din po that there were about 60 OFWs have tested positive for COVID-19, and some of them, Madam President, are actually staying in the streets because their employers would not allow them in their residences. So I'd like to raise this because I think it's important to note that every single OFW na lalabas ng bansa, dapat talagang na-orient ng maayos. Kasi kung ito ho, nakikita natin, nasa loob na ng ating airport, nakaganito, sa paningin pa lang, klarong-klaro, discrimination na po kaagad
Yun
eh.
nga.
Kasi hindi naman po ganyan eh. I mean, yung pupuntahan nila, alam natin, easily we can talk to our people there, yung ating embassy doon, alam natin na hindi ganyan dumarating pag dun sa bansa na yun, pag dumarating yung mga turista, hindi naman nakaganyan. So bakit kailangan silang nakaganyan? So ang point ko lang, Madam President, is that this should be a concern on the part of the Department of Migrant Workers Department. Would you agree, distinguished colleague?
Definitely, Your Honors, Majority Floor Leader, it really is something that our Department of Migrant Workers should look into with haste. In fact, it's almost like I will throw back the question to His Honor because he may know more than me and maybe the presiding officer as well. Hindi ba dapat pag whole of government approach? I'm just wondering, wala ba man lang kahit isang opisyal sa airport na nakapansin ito? Kasi nga yung sa akin, inaamin ko po sa inyo, dear colleagues, na dala ng dami ng trabaho. Hindi ko pa talaga na schedule yung privilege speech, but the majority floor leader will attest to the fact that I've been wanting to deliver. And no fault on anybody. If in fact, even on my part, I had to defend the Safe Pathways Bill. I had to also participate in the other interpellations. So I did this as soon as I could. But it makes you wonder, did anyone not notice it? Did anyone not care about the situation that our OFWs have to deal with on a day-to-day basis in the airport?
Unbelievable.
So let the record show that the gentleman raised his two hands, like in despair, two arms in despair. That's the meaning of the raising of his two hands.
And a big
Two arms
sigh.
And a sigh.
I just can't believe it, Madam President. And as I mentioned earlier, Madam President, what we have heard from the news, what happened in Hong Kong, let me point out that when we passed the Department of Migrant Workers Act, we placed a provision there, a provision there that would establish an action fund, agarang kalinga sa ating mga kababayang OFW. So dapat ito po ay napapakinabangan, and I'm looking forward to participating in the deliberation of this particular issue in our committee hearings. And even in the budget, we will be asking these questions. Madam President, perhaps may I ask the distinguished lady from Taguig Pateros, who is also a champion of, I mean, a health advocate, Madam President. She's very much aware of the different policies of different countries, o yung mga natututunan natin, you talk about futures thinking, etc. May we ask if, as to how do we ensure, Madam President, that our OFWs are still protected despite the different health protocol of host countries?
That's a good question, Your Honor. I personally have always relied on international relations, whether these are defined by official agreements. And speaking of official, that's why I put on record this United Nations Convention on the Rights of Migrant Workers. I'm sure there are others, but this is the one that I feel is very on point when it comes to their welfare and the obligation of signatories to take care of our OFWs, to care for them in the same way. Your Honor, let me emphasize, it should be the specific article that I mentioned
Article
says
7.
without distinction of any kind, because of their color, their sex, their language. So I bank on that. And then also, Madam President, personal relationships, interpersonal relationships we have with those receiving countries. And that would include the representation we have in those countries by way, in terms of our having official representatives there, di ba, our ambassadors. Eventually, I think, and His Honor would know more than me, we're putting into place itong representatives of Department of, hindi na DOFEL, what do we call it, DFW?
Department of Migrant Workers.
DMW. So maybe His Honor can even share more of what he knows on that. Like, I don't know if there will be sharing of personnel or there will be dedicated personnel. Obviously, in receiving countries such as the Middle East, na napakaraming Pilipino doon, I would assume that we would also need more manpower to
Yes.
to oversee and look out for them. And it makes me think, Your Honor, again, I'm not an expert, sa dami ng Pilipinong dumadating, how many entry points are there in the Middle East? Ganun ba kabigat to have like almost like a welcoming representative, to make sure that they landed okay? I don't know. I'm not like I said, I'm not an expert, but kung alam mo nang ganung kalaki ang may malalaking chances na meron dyan na first time bumiyahe, di ba? First time din na meron din dyan bumabiyahe, napakabata, di ba? Parang sa akin nga pag tinitingnan ko, parang wala pang 18, but maybe they're 20, 21, tapos mamamasukan sa personal home, hindi nga opisina. Ewan ko, gano'n ba kahirap doon na meron ding welcoming committee tayo to at least tell them na okay ka na ba? 'Di ba? May susundo ba sa'yo? Maybe that's asking too much, but we're really talking about millions and millions of Filipinos who are entering. I'm sure we can easily get the data at the proper time, how many enter key cities, 'di ba? Ano yung mga 5 top entry points, 'di ba? Baka man lang doon pwede nang may makapansin naman na ba't kaya naka-PPE itong mga dumating na to? May may footsies pa. Naawa naman po ako dahil ano kaya itsura nila sa ibang tao na dumating sila na nakaganon? I'll be honest, Your Honor, I think you've heard me tell you this story. Kinakabahan ako bumiyahe dahil alam ko in other countries na wala nang mask mandate. And so I personally am afraid na mapi-peer pressure ako not to take off my mask, even though personally I feel more secure in close quarters na naka-mask. Pero napi-peer pressure ako kasi kahit ako parang mako-conscious ako na naka-mask ako, lahat ng tao hindi naka-mask. Paano pa kaya yung naka-full PPE ka, dumating ka sa isang bansa, naka-full PPE ka, ano kaya feeling mo? Di ba yung naka-mask lang parang I'm admitting na nangyari na po sa akin yun na yung inattendan kong conference, wala na talagang nakamas. Talagang na-peer pressure na rin akong magtanggal
Yung
ng
ganito,
mask.
Madam
naka-PPE
President,
pa.
you feel discriminated right away, Madam President. Wala ka pa dun sa pupuntahan mo, parang yung dignity
Yun nga
of work, no? And you made mention about Article 7 dun sa International
UN Convention on the
no?
Protection
Without
of the Rights.
distinction of any kind.
Yes.
Parang nakakalungkot lang, Madam President. And again, parang ayaw na nating ungkatin kung tayo lang ba yung bansang ginaganito. Mas lalo sigurong masakit kung malaman natin na tayo lang.
Mr.
And-
President, if I may interrupt,
Yes.
I failed to include another article of the same convention that supports Article 7. Ito po yun. Article 25 states, migrant workers shall enjoy treatment not less favorable than that which applies to nationals of the state of employment in respect of remuneration and then it enumerates marami yan, other conditions of work. Pwede kong isama sa conditions of work, di ba yung pagbiyahe nila, naka-PPE silang pakahirap-hirap suotin para mag-CR ka, nakaganon ka. And then, hold on, Your Honor, baka I might have to add this. Anyway, I think that will suffice, Your Honor.
Yes, Madam President, again, the good thing about the passage of the Department of Migrant Workers is that right now, our OFWs are very much aware that there is now one house that they can go to, complain, ask for help, etc. Unlike before, if they go to Intramuros, sasabihin ng Dole, hindi, dun kayo sa Ortigas, dun sa POA. Pagdating dun sa POA, hindi kayo dito, dun kayo sa Department of Foreign Affairs, balik ulit kayo sa Rojas Boulevard at dun kayo pumunta. So at least ngayon ho, may isang bahay. But again, as I've been mentioning, and I sound like a broken record already, there's already one house right now who is responsible for all of this, and we have to find out from the Department of Migrant Workers what they are doing, what steps they are undertaking to assist and help our OFWs to comply with the necessary travel requirements of other countries. Regardless, Madam President, perhaps kahit na outside OFWs, no, regardless of purpose of travel, but let me not just put the weight on government agencies. Let's talk about itong mga ahensya, itong mga travel, itong mga what do you call this?
Recruitment
agencies?
agents, travel agencies,
Recruitment
manpower.
agencies, Madam President. Because is it possible that the agencies actually required the PPE requirement? Because, Madam President, hindi po sila pupunta ng ibang bansa as a group na ganyan na wala, I'm sure, na walang kasama o walang nag-a-assist from the manpower agency or recruitment agency. Kasi, I'm sure, nandyan sila, alam nila yan. At most likely, I'm just by looking at the pictures, most likely sila, because Secretary Opli is not even aware of this, most likely sila ang nag-require dito sa ating mga bagong bayani na magsuot nito, ipakitang ganyan sila, at parang, I'm sorry to say this, but parang nakakayurak ng dignidad ng pagiging isang worker na Pilipino, yung ginawa dito sa ating mga kababayan, Madam President.
Yes. Yes, Your Honor. I agree with you. Ang sakit sa dibdib na makita silang ganyan. Dagdag din natin, and later on I will personally message Sam YG dun sa nakatulong din po yung kanyang pag-post kasi may iba ding nag-comment doon na ang alam nga nila yung mga agency, yung binabanggit nyo ho, itong mga recruitment agencies, manpower agencies, ang nagre-require daw. So sana agad-agad maliwanagan tayo dyan, di ba?
Opo, at looking forward po tayo dyan, and ngayon pa lamang gusto na nating ipaabot sa ating mga kaibigan doon sa Department of Migrant Workers na bigyan tayo sana ng kalinawan mula po dito sa mga litrato at sa speech na ating narinig mula sa ating kasamahan mula sa Taguig Pateros. And one last thing that I'd like to raise, Madam President, when I was abroad just recently, like can't remember, probably 2 months ago, Madam President, ang dun pa lang po sa mga airline companies, I was in Singapore last month, and 2 months ago I was in the States. Ganun po yung requirement sa atin, sabi po nung mga airline companies. In fact, sabi po nila, ang pinakamahigpit pasuking bansa ngayon, Pilipinas, ang daming requirement. And no question about it. Sabi po nung mga nagtatrabaho doon sa airline company, ito po ay Philippine Airlines, ito po ay Emirates, ito po ay iba-iba po, no? At yun nga ho, pagpapasok ka daw pong Pilipinas, kailangan, well, during that time, mga 2 months ago, yung sa States, parang they were requiring pa na kailangan meron kang PCR. I was in New York, I was having a hard time looking for a PCR test.
Yes.
So, kailangan mong gawin, etc. And tinanong ko po, no, yung mga ibang bansa ba ginagawa ito? No way. Hindi namin ginagawa. Nung nasa Dubai na po tayo, papuntang Pilipinas, ganun din po. And I am, God is my witness, papasok na po doon sa tube ng eroplano, may isang OFW sa isang gilid, umiiyak. Tinanong ko bakit? Kasi ang daming hinihinging requirement nitong airline company. So, nag-intervene po ako, tinanong ko bakit? At sabi po nung airline company, pinakita ko sa akin, ang haba-haba po nung list na requirement. Babalik na yung kababayan natin sa Pilipinas, ganun kahaba po yung list. So, I was just wondering kung meron pong information ang ating kasamahan, Senator Cayetano, dito sa mga requirements nito, if it still exists. I don't even know if it still exists at this point in time, because pakita ko talagang parusa ito at pahirap, lalo na sa ating mga OFWs.
Your Honor, I am happy to respond to that. Ang masasabi ko, based din sa experience ko, merong mga bansa na wala ng requirement, merong ding matitindi pa ang requirement. Kasi this coming October, mag-a-attend po ako ng conference sa Finland. And then, hindi ko pa sure, naghahanap lang kami kung ano yung medyo mamura-mura na flight pabalik, no? Kasi wala naman diferensya, di ba? And nalaman ko na yung isang bansa, banggitin ko na, ang Spain, na I don't mind going there kasi nagpa-practice ako ng Spanish ko pag nandun ako, double booster ang requirement. So meron ding medyo matindi din ang requirement para pumasok. Compared to Finland, which is my main destination supposedly, wala na siyang requirement. So iba-iba din naman ang requirement, and I agree with His Honor na mukhang tayo ang isa sa marami, pero like I pointed out, yung Hong Kong nga may quarantine pa eh. So iba-iba din, and then yun nga na-report ko na nanggaling na rin ho ako sa Korea to represent the country sa Asia Pacific Parliamentarian Global Conference. Nag-require din naman sila ng PCR test, Your Honor. So iba-iba din naman, pero siguro ang isang maidadagdag ko sa usaping ito ay kung medyo matindi ang requirements, at the very least, Your Honor, kailangan maliwanag, di ba? Kung ano yung mga requirements na yon, di ba? Para hindi dagdag sa pahirap. Ito nga ho ang naging isang karanasan ko. Nung nag-travel ako, I don't know which particular travel, pero pagbalik ko, yun na yung time na wala ng quarantine, di ba? Pag bumiyahe tayo ngayon, pagbalik mo sa Pilipinas, di ba, wala namang quarantine. Pero ang tinatak sa boarding pass ko, home quarantine. So tinatanong ko siya, boss, bakit may home quarantine to? Wala nang quarantine. Ang sungit niya sa akin. Ang sungit niya talaga sa akin. So tinigilan ko na lang kasi parang nagmamadali siya, marami pang nasa likod ko. Pero sabi ko, kawawa naman yung, ako alam kong no quarantine kasi alam nyo naman ako, nag-check talaga ako sa IATF directly. Tinatawagan ko sila. Paano naman yung mga kababayan natin na walang kilala? And alam nila, walang quarantine, biglang tinatakan yung boarding pass mo na with quarantine. And guess what, Your Honor? Nangyari yon a few months ago pa. Matagal na tayong walang quarantine, di ba? Nangyari sa anak ko nung bumiyahe siya, pagbalik niya, less than a month ago. Sabi niya, Mom, tinatakan ng home quarantine yung aking boarding pass. Hello! Halos 6 months or more na tayong walang quarantine, pero tinatakan ng ganun. So sabi ko, grabe naman tayo. Sabi ko, ano ba yon yung stamp pad na yon? Gusto lang gamitin? So, doon ako naaawa. Pampadagdag talagang litong-lito na siguro yung mga kababayan natin sa ganyang mga policies. Basta sana yung maliwanag lang.
And maybe, Madam President, distinguished colleague, when we tackle this particular issue in a committee hearing, let's also invite representatives from our airport,
Yes.
airport officials, no? Kasi napakahalaga po nito. And again, Madam President, just to make my final point, the Department of Migrant Workers should be on top of this. May isa na hong tahanan para sa ating mga OFWs. Ang mga nakita nating larawan dito sa bulwagang ito ay hindi nakakatuwa, hindi acceptable, at nakakababa ng dignidad ng ating mga kapwa Pilipino na nagbabanat ng buto, naghahanap ng greener pasture to support their loved ones and family. I hope also, Madam President, that the DMW would look into the accountability of our manpower agencies, our recruitment agencies. Pag aalis po sila, ma-assist man lang. I'm sure there is a mechanism there that they should be able to assist our OFWs leaving the country, and hindi sila nire-require ng mga hindi naman na kailangan na requirements. And nabanggit nyo nga, baka mamaya racket ito nung mga manning agencies at mga recruitment agencies para additional kita rin naman nila ito. Kasi parang alam naman natin, yung face shield pa lang, napakatagal na noon, panahon pa ng noon
Parang
pa.
it was a lifetime ago nung naka-face shield pa tayo, right?
Exactly, and para makita natin yung mga kasama natin na ganito, alam naman natin, Madam President, what they're going to do outside this country. Hindi sila magbabakasyon, magbabanat ng buto, magsasakripisyo ng hindi kayang pantayang sakripisyo yung gagawin nila para sa kanilang mahal sa buhay. Tapos kakayanin pa natin ganito. So again, Madam President, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our distinguished colleague, Senator Cayetano, for raising this very important issue. I would be more than willing to participate in the coming hearings that will be conducted by the Committee on Migrant Workers. So again, thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you, distinguished colleague. At this juncture, Madam President, I move that we recognize the chairperson of the Committee on Migrant Workers, Senator Raffy Tulfo.
Senator Raffy Tulfo is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I would like to manifest my appreciation towards my esteemed colleague from Taguig, Senator Pia Cayetano, for her concern towards our OFWs, whom we considered as modern-day heroes. Yung picture na po yan, I think yan po ay nangyari siguro several months ago because a few days ago, galing po ako ng Bangkok. Pumunta po ako ng Bangkok and I met quite a few OFWs. In fact, ilan sa kanila nakipag-usap sa akin, napagkwentuhan at nagpa-selfie. Wala naman po silang ganong klaseng mga kasuutan. So siguro matagal na po yan. However, that is true na talagang pinapahirapan po yung ating OFW nung panahon kasagsagan po ng COVID. And I can attest to that. Ngayon, kung ang pinag-uusapan po natin ay are they being discriminated against by people in government or yung mga agencies? No, they are not. Yung kasabihan na siguro ito yung sinasabi ng mga taga-gobyerno noon, walang personalan, pera-pera lang. So talagang very clear na piniperahan lang po yung ating mga OFWs. Pinapagamit po sila ng mga kasuutang tulad niyan para kumita ng extra kung sino man yung sa manpower agency at maging taga-gobyerno nagre-require kasi may cut po sila, Madam President, doon sa bawat pinagkakitaan sa mga OFWs. Now, I just want to add, Madam President, sa experience ko, kung paano po talaga pinapahirapan at piniperahan, ginagatasan, ginagawang milking cow ang ating mga OFWs, na complaints na na-receive ko kasagsagan po ng COVID. Pagbalik po nila sa Pilipinas, after na lumabas sila sa airport, ididiretso po sila sa isang quarantine facility. Doon pa lamang pinagkakitaan na po yung OFW kasi may budget po yan, talagang binabayaran po yan ng OWA. At yung pagkain po, Madam President, na dapat ang budget is 3 times a day, may pamerienda pa, wala po. Sardinas, tuyo, salamat kung may corned beef. Isang pirasong itlog. Pero ang bayad po, full payment, yung pagkain dapat, pambongga, pero ang lumilitaw parang kaning baboy ang pinapakain sa kanila. Now, after po sila ma-quarantine, dito sa Maynila. At kapag sila po ay didiretso ng probinsya, pagdating po ng probinsya, another quarantine na naman. Sila po ay nire-require ng quarantine dito sa Maynila 7 to 10 days. Again, 7 to 10 days. Now, pag pupunta sila ng probinsya, paglabas po ng Maynila, totoo po ito. Pagdating ng province, another 7 to 10 days. What the F? Mother F? Sabi pa nga ng mga tao sa kanto. Can you imagine, Madam President, pinag-quarantine mo na nga sa Maynila, dito talaga may discrimination na. Siguro sa ngalan ng salapi. Pinag-quarantine mo na nga, paglabas ng airport, pagdating dito sa Maynila, pagdating ng province, another quarantine. Bakit? Kasi pagkakitaan na naman yung mga pobre nating OFWs. Pagkakitaan sila, pero bago sila pagkakitaan, ay kailangan pahirapan sila. So, naging complaint sa akin ng mga OFWs, naubos lang yung kanilang bakasyon sa quarantine facilities. Buti sana kung yung quarantine facilities ay okay. Kaso po, mabaho, bulok, yung mga dilapidated buildings o yung mga lumang eskwelahan na kinukonvert sa quarantine, ginagawang quarantine area para maningil sa gobyerno. Ang mga pagkain, parang kanin baboy. Yan po ay isang reality. Now, talking about discrimination, yes, pagdating po ng ibang bansa, tingnan nyo na naman po yung kanilang kaawa-awang itsura. Dito, of course, they're not gonna be discriminated against dahil kalahi natin sila, kaawaan natin sila. Sa halip na i-discriminate natin sila dahil kawawa naman talaga. Pero pagdating po ng ibang bansa, doon na po sila di-discriminate. Mababa po ang tingin sa kanila. Maging sa ating mga Pilipino, in fact, there were several times nung nasa Amerika ako, pinagtatawanan po tayo ng mga tao ron, maging mga kapwa natin Pilipino sa Amerika, bakit daw ginagawa tayong kengkoy na sa loob ng eroplano, meron na nga tayong face mask, meron pa tayong face shield. Anong klaseng sistema yan? Pagdating po ng airport, tayo lang bukod tangi, ma-identify mo na agad eh. Kapag sa, kahit na anong airport ng ibang bansa during COVID times, yung kasagsagan ng COVID, madaling ma-identify ang Pilipino. Hindi po dahil sa kulay, sa itsura, o kung ano paman, dahil po sa tinatawag na face shield. Pag naka-face shield ka, Pilipino yan. Saan ka nakita na face mask, sasama mo pa ng face shield, tapos may gloves pa talaga, may PPE pa talaga? Is somebody paying attention? Sabi pa ni Sen Pia, are they paying attention? No. And God knows who does not pay. H-U-D-A-S. Kasi po maraming hudas, unfortunately, sa ating gobyerno. Pinagkikitaan po yung misery ng ating mga OFWs. Now, what I can promise to you, Madam President, and to my colleagues here in the Senate and Senator Pia Cayetano, it will not happen under my watch. I'll do everything at all cost na hindi na po maapi ang ating mga OFWs dahil ipaglalaban ko silang patayan tulad ng aking po pinangako sa kanila time and time again before I came here na ako po'y broadcaster and during my campaign period, and I said that again and I'll say it one more time. Hindi na po mangyari yan dahil ako po ay may kipaglaban ng patayan na hindi na pwedeng apihin ang ating mga OFWs. Maraming salamat, Madam President.
Madam President, just a quick response. I thank the gentleman, our chairman of the Committee on Migrant Workers, for his intervention. However, I'd just like to point out that hindi ho ito nangyari months ago. I noted that His Honor said na wala siyang nakita nung bumiyahe siya, pero just because, sir, na wala ho kayong nakita, it doesn't mean naman po na hindi nangyayari. Kasi in fact, more than isang beses ako bumiyahe, and the second time, di ba nabanggit ko, gusto ko sana silang kausapin, hindi ko lang magawa, dahil nagmamadali din akong makarating sa flight ko. So, nagkaroon pa ako ng opportunity to travel after that. Nataon naman na nung time na yon wala. So, I guess it depends din kung ano yung time, ang oras ng biyahe, yung bang may kasabay kang mga OFWs. Pero yung kay Sam YG po, kahapon lang nangyari. And yung sa akin nga po is barely a month ago, not months ago po. Just for the record, na it is still quite recent.
Sige. Kasi, thank you, Senator Pia. Madam President, Dahil kung meron mang mga ganun pang klaseng pangyayari, and if it just happened recently, usually yung ating mga OFWs magrereklamo po sa aking action center, magte-text po sa aming hotlines. So, since wala po ako natanggap ng ganung klaseng reklamo, I just assume na maybe months ago.
Hindi po.
So I'm not saying na definite with certainty na yan ay months ago. So I just assume kasi nga po wala akong natanggap ng mga reklamo recently from OFWs, plus the fact na a few days ago galing lang po ako ng Bangkok, and umalis po ako rito ng morning sa Terminal 2, at ang dami ko pong nakita mga OFWs, siguro mahigit 20 na siguro, at nakakausap ko sila, nakakwentuhan ko sila. Wala akong, sa kwentuhan ko sa kanila, wala silang nabanggit na mga ganong klaseng PPEs na ni-require. Maybe, tama ho kayo, Senpia, maybe depende sa time, sa oras, at sa kung ano yung lugar na pupuntahan. Maaari nga siguro.
Yun nga po.
But again, like I promised, now this will not happen again under my watch, being the committee chair of the migrant workers. I'm not gonna allow that. I will not allow that. Talagang may mga tatamaan sa akin. And I'm very glad na yung pong ating secretary ng migrant workers, si Toots Ople, ay a very capable person na marami experience sa mga OFWs, and I'm sure we can work together para mapaayos yung buhay ng ating mga OFWs. Maraming salamat again, Madam President.
Thank you din po.
Thank you, Senator
If I
Tulfo.
get any updates, Your Honor, I will be happy to share, kasi like I said, meron din akong mga inaalam din na updates, no, kung meron man. But I'd also like to share that many times a person is a victim and they don't even know it. So it's possible na hindi sila magre-report dahil hindi nila naisip, hindi nila alam na nadidiscriminate na pala sila. Ang mga kababayan natin ang sisipag, sabik na makatrabaho, so baka hindi nila napansin o naisip na tama ba itong pinagpipipiik tayo, di ba? Kaya tayo, pag may na-observe po tayo, we bring it up so that sana hindi na humaba ang kanilang pagdudusang nakasuot ng full PPE, from gloves to footsies and face shields, Your Honor. Maraming salamat sa ating chairman at sa ating majority floor leader and the presiding officer.
Thank you, Madam President, and let me also add, if they were required to wear all this and they were asked to pay for it, then this whatever agency or manning or recruitment agency should be accountable. Anyway, Madam President, next to interpellate, I don't know, interpellate or manifest, make a manifestation, is the distinguished Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros. I move that she be recognized, Madam President.
Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized.
Salamat, Madam President. Good lady, gentle lady from Taguig and Pateros. Madam President, the privileged speech of the good lady from Taguig and Pateros is about the difficulties we visit or other countries visit on our OFWs with these PPEs. And I know that this brief manifestation and few questions of mine are a bit tangential, but I feel the urgent need to raise this issue as a brief manifestation at first, as it also involves OFWs and the hardships they undergo. And really, time is of the essence. Masaya din po ako, Madam President, good lady from Taguig at Pateros, na nandirito rin po si Sen Tulfo, ang chair ng Committee on OFWs, dahil actually kahindik-hindik po ito na isusumbong ko sa inyo. Kasi itong weekend lamang po, nakatanggap ang aking opisina ng nakakabahalang kaso ng isang Pilipina na umalis sa Pilipinas para magtrabaho sa Saudi Arabia. Siya po'y dineploy noong November 2, 2021 para magtrabaho bilang kasambahay. Ayon sa mga ulat, nung nalaman na buntis siya, pinabalik siya sa agency na ang pangalan, kanina pinag-uusapan ng gentle lady at ng majority leader, yung mga recruitment agencies, ang pangalan ng ahensya nitong ating kababayan ay Manabe Aleklas Recruitment Agency, Di umano, pinainom siya ng pampalaglag.
Oh my
Yes, na naging dahilan ng kanyang pagkamatay.
God. Oh my God.
Yes. Ang sabi po ay namatay si Jovelyn, yan po ang pangalan ng ating kabaro, gentle lady, pero duda dito ang kanyang mismong kamag-anak. At wala pang nakakaalam kung bakit, pasintabi po sa mga kumakain na nakakarinig nito, kung bakit nahiwa siya mula lieg hanggang tiyan at tinanggalan pa ng dila at utak. Dumating po ang kanyang labi ni Jovelyn nitong September 17, 2022 sa Davao Airport sa isang maliit na bag. There are so many points that this raises, Madam President, gentle lady from Taguig and Pateros. Una, we really need to address the gender differentiated needs of women workers, mga kabaro natin. Ito na ang pangalawang beses na nadinig natin ang pilit na pagpapalaglag. Ang una po ay ang witness natin laban sa human trafficking galing sa Syria. So, gentle lady from Taguig and Pateros, what mechanisms do you see need to be in place to enable swift, meaningful investigations in cases like this? Kasi po, humihingi daw ng autopsy ang pamilya, pero wala pang nakuha. Kung dito, ang mga manggagawa natin sa iba't ibang sektor ay hirap makakuha ng katarungan sa pang-aabuso sa kanila, ganoon din sa mga manggagawang Pilipino, lalo na mga Pilipina sa ganitong kaso sa ibang bansa. In the immediate, gentle lady from Taguig and Pateros, the family of Jovelyn needs our help to investigate her death. Her family wants an autopsy conducted. Kailangan din po nila ng agarang tulong pinansyal sa mga kaukulang ahensya dahil walang makuhang benefits. Bilang sabi nila, 3 buwan pa lang daw siya sa Saudi bago namatay. Thank you, Senator Pia, for the kind indulgence, and I and the family of Jovelyn would really appreciate yung inyo pong payo sa ganitong terribleng sitwasyon na kinalagyan niya.
Thank you, Your Honor, the Senator from Panay, for taking the time to bring this up. Sabi nga nyo, hindi eksaktong similar sa sitwasyon, pero tama lang ho na binanggit nyo dahil may pagkakataon tayong makatulong. Salamat for giving us that opportunity. Sa pamilya ni Jovelyn, my heart, and I speak for all the senators, I'm sure, we have no words to express our sympathies and the pain we are also feeling from this news that our colleague has shared with us. Ang nakikita kong swift action, bagamat nasa Amerika si Secretary Ople, I'm blessed to be able to communicate with her with ease. I will immediately message her. Actually, as we speak naman, mini-message ko din siya na I deliver the privilege speech kasi tayo naman gusto natin makatulong sa gobyerno na magawa din nila ang gusto nilang gawin, no, para makatulong sa mga kababayan natin. So, isasama natin yan if our colleague from Panay can give us the complete details, pati contact info, because I'm certain Secretary Ople will have her team here act on it. To be clear lang po, ang remains po ni Jovelyn are still in, is it Saudi? Tama ho ba?
Nakarating na po sa
nakarating
pamilya
na.
niya, opo, sa Davao Airport. So,
Nasa
somewhere in the
Davao.
Davao. Opo.
Okay. So on that note, I will also inform my staff. I have a full-time doctor in my staff to coordinate with Davao a hospital in Davao. Nandyan ang Southern Philippines
Medical Center.
SPMCC yata ang full name nun, to see if they can do this. But whatever we can do, it will not take away the pain of the family, pero mabigyan naman lang ng hustisya. Grabe ho ang karumal-dumal na itong nangyari sa kanya, and dapat full support po tayo. I can assure our colleague from Panay that as I speak, no, my chief of staff is here beside me. we will work with your staff to assist the family and also inform the secretary. Akala ko naman nasa abroad pa. We will still inform her. Pero on our own, I'm sure we can help because nandito naman tayo sa Pilipinas.
Maraming salamat po to the gentle lady from Taguig and Patero. Salamat po, Madam President.
Madam President, if I may, I just feel like joining the distinguished ladies in giving our profound sympathies to the family of Jobilin. I just can't help but stand here before you, Madam President, because part of the measure that we passed last Congress in the Department of Migrant Workers is that the department should be aware of all of this, and sila po kasi, Madam President, yung pumalit sa polo natin, no? I also would like to put myself in this conversation, and we wanted to be of help sa family ni Jobilin. Of course, meron pong benefits yung family niya na makukuha from OWA and everything that we can do doon sa pamilya. But at the same time, Madam President, yung legal side nito, no, yung may initiative po, meron din pong migrant workers desk ang bawat embahada natin ngayon. The department can also investigate, initiate, pursue and help prosecute in cooperation with the Department of Justice. So I just want to put that on record, Madam President. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Madam President, makasingit ulit.
Senator Tulfo.
I would like to inform my colleague from Patero, Senator Pia, na I'm really willing na makipagtulungan sa inyo because meron po akong malawak na karanasan. My show, who's been helping OFWs for the past 20 years, malawak po ang aking karanasan na mag-solve ng ganitong klase mga kaso. I've solved so many cases already similar to this. Na sige, let's help each other. We don't even have to bother Secretary Tus Ople if she's in the States. Let her have her vacation.
Ay, hindi naman ho nagbabakasyon in fairness. Kasama ho sa official delegation ng Presidente.
So we don't have to bother her. We can do this, the both of us. Let's help each other out. I'm sure meron tayong magagawa. Masusolve natin to. Like I said, marami po ang karanasan sa ganitong klase mga problema. And I have my staff who are also well-versed and well-equipped pagdating po sa pagsusolve, pagbibigay solusyon sa ganitong klaseng problema. So, I'll be talking to you later and to Senator Ontiveros for the information. And I will assure you, my dear colleagues, na meron pong mangyari dito na resulta from the investigation that we will be doing, we will be conducting. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tulfo, with acknowledgement and gratitude for the quick action, and I'm sure the generosity and the experience, the length and breadth of decades' work of Senator Tulfo will be able to enhance the quick action regarding problems, especially of our OFWs. But we should ensure that this atrocity does not happen again, and a policy from the DOLE must be instituted as well. Thank
DMW,
you.
Madam President, yes.
Yes.
The
And
Department
DFA.
of Migrant Workers.
Department of Migrant Workers, the DOLE, DFA, and other relevant institutions.
Yes,
Thank you.
And it's a good way to test our laws, Madam President, that we pass and
Exactly.
ensure that it's working. And as policymakers, that is our job to ensure that we are also exercising our oversight function. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, if there are no other interpellators, I move that we refer the privileged speech and all the manifestations and interpellations thereon of Senator Pia Cayetano to the Committee on Migrant Workers. I so move, Madam President.
Hearing no objection, the speech is referred to the Committee on Migrant Workers.
Madam President, at this juncture, some administrative matters. I move to elect the following members of the Committee on Ethics and Privileges: Senator Rafi Tulfo, Vice Chairperson; Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa; and Senator Francis Chis Escudero. I so move, Madam President.
The three members of the Committee on Ethics are hereby elected and reflected in the records.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, with the consent of the body, I move to transfer the committee referral of the following Senate bills from the Committee on Games and Amusement to the Committee on Ways and Means. Senate Bill number 1281, or the Anti-Online Gambling Act. Senate Bill number 63, the Anti-Online Gambling Act. I so move, Mr. President, Madam President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank
Two
you,
bills.
Madam President. Madam President, with the consent of the body, I move to transfer the committee referral of the following Senate bills from the Committee on Rules to the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance. Senate Bill number 1263, or the Philippine Heart Centers Act. Senate Bill number 1267, Visayas Kidney Institute Charter Act. I so move, Madam President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Madam President, with the consent of the body, I move to transfer the referral of the following Senate bills from the Committee on Rules to the Committee on Local Government. Senate Bill number 1274, Founding Anniversary of Rosario, Cavite. Senate Bill number 1299, Founding Anniversary of the Island Guardian City of Samal, Davao del Norte. And Senate Bill number 1153, Araw ng Marinduque. I so move, Madam President.
Is any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Madam President, with consent of the body, I move that Senator Ramon Bong Revilla be made co-author to Senate Bill number 1310, or the Subscriber Identity Module SIM Registration Act. So move, Madam President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Madam President, a while ago, I was given a text message that Senator Bong Revilla would like to insert for the record his manifestation with regard to the privileged speech of our distinguished colleague, Senator Pia Cayetano. Just to put that on record. Madam President, pursuant to Section 18 of the Rules of the Senate, may I just manifest for the record the creation of a subcommittee under the Committee on Economic Affairs with conformity of the chairperson, Senator Grace Poe, in relation to Senate Bill number 129, or the Trabaho para sa Lahat ng Pilipino Act, to be chaired by this representation, Madam President. I so manifest, Madam President.
Noted.
Thank you, Madam
Manifestation.
President. Madam President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, September 26, 2022.
Session is adjourned until Monday, 3 p.m., September 26. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, dear colleagues.